Good evening and welcome to the third and final Indiana gubernatorial debate of the 2012 campaign. Presented by the Indiana Debate Commission, I'm Ken Owen, a former TV journalist, and in Indianapolis and Fort Wayne, I'm now the Executive Director of Media Relations at DePauw University in Greencastle. I will serve as moderator of tonight's event, which is coming to you live from the studios of WFWA-PBS 39 in Fort Wayne for the next hour. These three men alongside of me will answer questions, and as they have in the previous two debates, the candidates will also engage in a Lincoln-Douglas-style exchange on issues that are related to the campaign. The questions tonight come from the citizens of Indiana. Some are here in the studio to present their questions. Other queries have been collected by the Debate Commission and will be presented by me. The questions have not been screened by the candidates nor by myself. This debate is being broadcast live on radio and television stations throughout the state of Indiana and is available on a number of websites. C-SPAN is also carrying this debate. Some outlets may tape delay this broadcast for use later. My primary task, the Indiana Debate Commission would like to thank, our hosts here at WFWA, our broadcast production partners from Lakeshore Public Television and the Commission's affiliate organizations, and volunteers for making this evening possible. As we begin, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer most questions. At my discretion, another 30 seconds may be offered to each candidate for a rebuttal. The goal is to give each candidate equal time and the voters an opportunity to better understand the positions of these three men. We will be changing up about midway through the session tonight and move to a format based on the Lincoln-Douglas debates of the 1858 campaign. Each candidate will be called upon to make a 1-minute statement about his beliefs on a particular issue, and then the other two candidates will get 2 minutes apiece to rebut that original statement. Now, after that, the first candidate the one who made the original statement, will have the opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement. Following a round of that with all three candidates, we will return to voter questions with 1-minute responses, and the final question of the evening will be general in nature, and the candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to the final question. My primary task, and I will be firm on this evening, is to keep the candidates on time. The candidates can take notes this evening from the studio here, but they were not allowed to bring in pre-written notes or props to the stage. The candidates drew lots before the event to determine where they will stand on the stage and the order in which they will be asked questions and make their opening statements as well. The closest to me is Mike Pence, the Republican candidate for governor. In the middle is John Gregg, the Democratic Party candidate. And the farthest from me in the studio tonight is Rupert Boneham, the Libertarian candidate. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, it is time for the opening statements, and we begin by draw with Mike Pence.
Thank you, Ken. And I want to thank the Indiana Debate Commission for this series of debates and WFWA. It's good to be back in Fort Wayne, Indiana. You know, I'm running for governor because I love this state and because I have a plan to take Indiana from good to great. You know, we've made extraordinary progress in the last 8 years. We've become the fiscal envy of the country. We've reformed our government. We've brought about education reforms. We've brought more freedom and more tax relief to Hoosiers in the workplace than ever before. But with 250,000 Hoosiers still out of work, we've got work to do. And that's why I've put together a roadmap that's designed to put more Hoosiers to work than ever before in our state's history and get these schools working for all of our kids. I'm proud that our plan has been endorsed by job creators across the state of Indiana, like the National Federation of Independent Business, Indiana Manufacturers Association, and realtors. They know we've got to make job creation job one. I look forward to talking about our plan again tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Pence. John Gregg, your opening statement.
Thank you. I'm the only candidate for governor who has experience in business, education, and bipartisan state government. And as governor, I'll keep our state from being controlled by the Tea Party. Yesterday, Congressman Pence tried to separate himself from his ticket mate, Richard Murdoch, and announced that he now supported abortion for the survivors of rape and incest. Well, that's not what he told Indiana Right to Life just earlier this year. You know, career politicians always change their topics, change their positions when it's politically expedient. But his record is he's the candidate that was going to shut down the entire government over a woman's access to health care. He can't separate himself from the Tea Party. because he is the Tea Party. So look beyond the party labels. As governor, I have a plan to create 97,000 jobs. I'll work to improve our schools, fight for the middle class, and do it in a bipartisan way. I did it as Speaker of the Indiana House, and I'll do it as governor.
Mr. Gregg, thank you. And Rupert Boneham, your opening statement.
Thank you. And thank you to the Indiana Debate Commission and to everyone at home watching. 12 days left of this campaign. It has been an amazing journey. I have been traveling across the state, north, south, east, and west. I have been talking to people about what I have been doing in the past 20 years, creating jobs, creating industry, putting people back to work. And I've had a lot of people tell me they're voting for me and they believe in me. But I've had a few tell me, why should I vote for a third party? Isn't that a wasted vote? And I tell them every time, the only time you waste your vote is when you don't use your vote, or when you vote for someone that you do not believe in, voting for the lesser of two evils, or even worse, voting for that person that does not believe in you. I believe in you.
Thank you, Mr. Boneham. Time for the questions, and tonight's first query for the candidates comes from Brad Steenport, a sales representative from Fort Wayne, who was with us in the studio tonight. Mr. Steenport, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. How would each of you balance environmental issues and the free market? I believe there's a fine line between taking care of our delicate environment and our struggling economy. How do we keep Indiana business friendly while at the same time treading lightly?
We begin with you, Mr. Pence.
Well, Brett, thanks for the question. If Hoosiers believe one thing, it is that we love the land. And we've been caretakers of the land since even before this state was founded. And I'm proud of the progress that we've made under the current administration in clean water, clean air, and keeping our land clean. But I agree with a bit of the premise of your question. I don't think we need to make a choice between growing our economy and creating jobs during these difficult times and still looking after our cherished environment in Indiana. Hoosier farmers do that every day. Hoosier businesses do that every day. And if I'm elected to be governor, I'm determined to do that as well. I do believe we've got to make job creation job one. But I believe we can do that in a way that we apply common sense practices through the Indiana Department of Environmental Management and work in a way that has more common sense in the application of national rules from the EPA. We can do both. You're right, Brad.
Mr. Gregg, your 1 minute response.
Thank you, Congressman Pence. I agree with you on that. There's one for you, Mike. I do. I think that it's important that jobs is number one, but I don't think these two are mutually exclusive. In fact, I'm convinced they're not. We've made a lot of good gains in the last few years in Indiana, and I think we can continue down that path. When I talk with business people and they talk about rules and regulations, they also tell me they'd like to get permits done a little faster. So I think as we've seen the Bureau of Motor Vehicles improve and be quicker, we can do the same with some of our agencies that give permits. But by the same standpoint, we've got a lot of regulations in Indiana. And I think that that's why I have proposed that we would, one, review every regulation. We would see that it was based in science, cost-benefit analysis, and make sure that it was applied with Hoosier common sense. We've got to grow our economy, but we can do that and protect our environment too.
Mr. Boneham?
Being involved in our environment, being involved in one of the best resources we have in Indiana is the ability to show the rest of the country coming to Indiana and camping, exploring, wandering Indiana is a really great thing to do. There's a lot of great things to see here in Indiana. Using that as one of the many ways we can highlight how we can protect our environment and still grow businesses. Using the environment to help promote businesses while still protecting the environment. I have said to my daughter for many years, we have to make sure that Indiana is safe and clean, and still Indiana for generations to come. I want to be that steward for our environment. I love camping in Indiana.
Thank you, gentlemen. We move on to our next question, which has been submitted via videotape. It comes from Sister Peg Spindler. She's the executive director of the Sojourner Truth House, a day shelter for homeless and at-risk women and children in Gary. Here's her question.
Given the economy and the possibility of cutting billions from programs for the most vulnerable of our citizens, I would like to know what your plan is to reduce poverty and homelessness in the state of Indiana.
Mr. Gregg, you get the first crack at this one.
Thank you. Peg, thank you for your question. I think the key that we would all agree is to have a situation in Indiana where everybody that wants a job can have a job. And if we focus on our opportunities in agriculture, advanced manufacturing, life sciences, logistics, and energy, and not focus on social issues and these divisive issues, I'm convinced we can do that. We've also need to look at how we have balanced our budget recently in Indiana by making significant cuts in the mental health budget and budgets that also concern adoption services through the Department of Children's Services. You know, we've cut over $200 million in some of these programs that reach out to the people that you're specifically talking about. But the best thing that we can do in Indiana is to see how that money is being spent, see what prioritize, but also create jobs. I do want to work in an environment where every Hoosier that wants a job has a job.
Mr. Boneham.
Poverty and homelessness is a problem. I have been for 20 years working with the lower socioeconomic scale, helping them figure out how they can go to work, how they can have decent housing, affordable, decent housing. At the same time, I've been running my mentoring program. That can't be 10 seconds. At the same time I've been running my mentoring program, I have watched our government put more and more regulations in front of helping our homeless population.
Mr. Boneham, I'm going to have to
okay.
The debate commission is keeping time to not me, and they are holding the stop sign. So hopefully we can get back to that. Mr. Pence, your turn.
Sister Peg, thanks for your question. I think you put your finger exactly on where we need to be focused in the next administration, and that is we've got to make job creation job one. That's why I'm proposing, right after we make sure that we have an honestly balanced budget and see to our state's fiscal health so we can continue to fund the programs that we have in place today, I think we ought to cut taxes across the board for every business and every individual in Indiana, or just about every business, since most small businesses file as individuals. I also think, as I've set up in Gary, in visiting schools in your area, I think the time has come to make career and vocational education a priority in our high schools again. Good paying jobs, more opportunities for our kids. That's how we're going to confront this tough economy and confront poverty in Indiana the best.
I'm told by the studio that we have shorted Mr. Boneham 30 seconds, so 30 seconds to you, Mr. Boneham.
I knew that time went too quick. Okay, I am the only one of us that have been working for 20 years over, helping people get themselves out of poverty, helping them get off the streets, showing them how they can create housing for themselves without just holding their hand out to the government. I know that it is not easy to take the government out of charity, but I also know it can be done.
Everybody's had a minute now. Let's move on to the next question. It comes from Trish Kohlberg, a medical scribe from Granger, Indiana. She could not be here tonight, but I will read it for you, assuming I don't need my reading glasses. While I have been happy to hear your general positions on education in prior debates, what we do not know is how you view science education. Earlier this year, it was at the root of controversy over Senate Bill 89, which would have allowed school corporations to require that creationism be taught in Indiana public schools. This bill was passed in the Senate and later died in the House without making it to the governor's desk. If a bill such as this came to your desk as governor, gentlemen, would you sign it? Mr. Boneham, we start with you.
Science is a big issue for me. My father taught at IU at Kokomo for 30 years, geology. My mother taught chemistry at Lewis Cass High School for 20 years. Science is very important to me. Science, not theory, science. If that bill came to my desk for the public schools to teach creationism, I would not be able to sign that. if we want our children to just be taught creationism and not evolution, we should find those alternative schools. I am very big into growing our span of what we are teaching in our schools. I do want to develop a lot of new programs, new vocational, industrial arts, home arts, life skills, entrepreneurship programs. But I want to keep science, science.
Mr. Pence, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your question. You know, I've been married to a school teacher sitting right over there for about 27 years, and an elementary school teacher to boot. And my father-in-law was actually Indiana State Teacher of the Year in 1987. You know, I don't think there's anything that ails education in Indiana that can't be fixed if we give parents more choices and teachers more freedom to teach. That's why our plan includes creating more opportunities for teachers, celebrating those schools that are doing a great job, celebrating teachers that are doing a great job. I also want to see if we can find ways to encourage those important pre-K programs that are happening all over the state of Indiana. Like in my hometown of Columbus, Indiana, the Busy Bee program is there for underprivileged kids, like in a lot of communities around the state. So I want to look for ways that we can expand opportunities for parents and for kids and give more freedom to teachers in the classroom. Issues of curriculum, though, I think should all be decided ultimately by parents, by local schools, not dictated out of Indianapolis.
Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. You know, the day I'm elected governor is the day that the war on public teachers and public education ends. Everybody that I've talked to agrees that we need education reform, but I don't think we do it by scapegoating our teachers. That's why I'm pleased to say that I'm the only candidate running for governor who has proposed a pre-kindergarten or an early childhood program. Studies show that for every dollar we invest today saves $7 over the course of that child's education. I think it best said that the best ideas don't come out of Indianapolis, and there's a reason why they're called local schools. But in the last 7-8 years, we've seen all the reform come out of Indianapolis. No voice by teachers, superintendents, board members, parents. I think that's wrong. I think we need to be having a seat at the table and be more inclusive. I've said that for months, and again, when I'm governor, the war on public education and public teachers, it ends.
I'm going to provide 30 seconds for each candidate to rebut this. Mr. Boneham, you're first.
I am the only candidate up here that has said, I am willing to end the I-step and restructure the way we grade our classrooms, our teachers, and our students, showing how we will grade on the performance, on the progress through the year, instead of the performance of one test. This is a very important subject for us to deal with. We have to empower our classrooms. We have to give the power back to our teachers and our principals to create the curriculum that will work.
Mr. Pence.
Well, like I said, I think there's nothing that ails our schools that can't be fixed if we give parents more choices and teachers more freedom to teach. And, you know, giving underprivileged families, John, more choices through our scholarship voucher program is just simply the right thing to do. Your program for pre-K is a pilot program around the state. My view is we've already got a lot of great pre-K programs all over Indiana. I want to sit down with legislators, with local leaders, and find out particularly about underprivileged kids, just like we did with our voucher program. How can we make pre-K more available to our vulnerable kids around Indiana? We don't need another state program, John. We've got great programs in communities around Indiana that ought to be encouraged.
Mr. Gregg, your 30 seconds.
Thank you. As a former president of Vincennes University, I know how important it is that students, when they graduate, be career and college ready. But Congressman, we proposed a pilot program because we pay for things in Indiana, not like the way they do in Washington, D.C. We don't have a printing press down there where we can just crank out more money. We don't. Now, I know in Washington, D.C., you just spend now, worry later. But once that surplus is gone, it's gone.
Gentlemen, thank you. As we approach the midpoint of this session, we shift gears a little bit. As I promised at the opening, in the tradition of the Lincoln-Douglas debates of 1858, the candidates will now have an opportunity to discuss the issues amongst themselves. Each candidate will get to make a statement. The other two can then rebut that statement. And then the one who made the original statement, if you're keeping score at home, gets the opportunity to bring the subject to a close. So it's 1-2-2-1. Then we'll move on to the next opening statement, so each gentleman will have an opportunity to bring up an issue he chooses. We begin with Mr. Pence. Your statement, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. You know, Indiana's made incredible progress in the last 8 years. We've honestly balanced budgets during all those years. We've become the fiscal envy of the country, and now we have the largest budget surplus that we've ever had in our history. It's going to make it possible for us to strengthen our budget reserves, and I believe we can cut taxes for every Hoosier. But John, you just said that we pay for things in Indiana, okay? But when you were Speaker of the House, for 5 of the 6 years that you were running the State House, Indiana ran deficits. When Mitch Daniels came into power just a couple years later on budgets that you helped to write, Indiana was $700 million in debt and had a deficit of $820 million. You know, John, facts are stubborn things. And I'd just like to know from my colleagues on stage, how are we going to make sure and preserve the fiscal integrity of the state of Indiana? We've got to have honestly balanced budgets going forward. And I'd love to know what my fellow aspirants up here think about that, and love to hear what my friend John has to say about his record.
You're about to find out. Mr. Gregg, your 2 minutes.
Thank you. Congressman, if you'd have spent the last 12 years in Indiana rather than in Congress, you'd know that our budget has to be balanced, Indiana, according to our Constitution. I've balanced and produced bipartisan balanced budgets. And oddly, these you talk about, they were supported by Fort Wayne's own David Long and our Lieutenant Governor Becky Skillman. I find it almost laughable that a United States congressman would lecture anybody about fiscal responsibility. You voted not once, not twice, but 5 times, Congressman. You voted the results increased our deficit by $200 billion with a B, dollars. I have no idea what you could possibly know about a deficit. And what we do with our programs, we do pay for them as we go. We've got a way to pay for our tax cuts. We've got a way to pay for our pilot programs. I think this is essential. We've got a surplus in Indiana, but we don't know how much. Earlier this year, they found $500 million. We don't know how much surplus we've got. And in addition to that, you know, Congressman, this surplus isn't from a growing economy. $900 million of it came from cuts in public education, $200 from the Department of Children's Services. So we've cut programs. It's not from a growing economy. Tomorrow morning, there will be 800,000 students go to school in Indiana qualified for a free breakfast and a free lunch. Our personal per capita income has dropped from 36th to 42nd. And your solution on the whole thing was to say when they wanted to increase the minimum wage to $7.25 was to say it was excessive. That's just wrong. You can't raise a family on $10 an hour, let alone $7.25. So, you know, enjoy what you're saying, but you don't know anything about passing a balanced budget. You've never passed a budget.
Mr. Boneham, you now have 2 minutes to rebut
Thank you.
Mr. Pence's original statement.
Yes, the budget. We've got to come up with our next budget in 2013, 2014. You know, in my office, as I've been campaigning, I've started doing the research and trying to figure out where our dollars are being spent, where some of the problems are, where we could actually do some budget cutting, some administration cutting, maybe some program cutting. But first, we have to know where the dollars are and what we're spending the dollars on. One of the things that we have found is there's a lot of mystery, even in our own government. There's a lot of people that don't want to exactly let us know where every dollar is going. One of the reasons why we don't always seem to believe or trust in our government is because at times they seem to be hiding things from us. I want to be that person to say, it's our time to find out what's going on. It's our time to pull that curtain back and see where our dollars really are. I will make a 2013-2014 budget that we will be able to balance, that we will be able to follow, that will give us a surplus at the end, but I will do it with information. I will do it with knowing what is working and what is not working in our system. I have traveled across the state and I've talked to many state employees. Many of them have told me, when we're ready to start looking at bloated administrations, you let me know. I want to be that person that stands up for all of us and creates a government that we can all believe in. I'm signing up to be one of the governments. I want to be our next governor, and I want everyone to trust in our government. Please, I know you can trust in me.
Thank you, Mr. Boneham. Now, Mr. Pence, you have a minute to wrap up this point.
Well, thank you. You know, John, you're entitled to your own opinion and not entitled to your own facts. Your argument isn't with me, it's with the state budget agency. Folks can go online, these fact checkers out there can check it out. In 5 of the 6 years you were Speaker of the House at the State House in Indianapolis, we ran deficits. You did it by using budget gimmicks. You put off payments to local schools, to universities. You raided the reserves. John, you know, you just can't have your version of reality here. It's one of the reasons why right after you left the State House as Speaker, our credit rating was downgraded twice. By the time Mitch Daniels 2 years later arrived in Indianapolis, we were in a lot of budget trouble. Again, you know, $700 million in debt to local governments, to higher education, to local schools, and $820 million deficit. We can't have that, John, and we've got to begin with honestly balanced budgets. If I'm elected governor, we're going to start with fiscal integrity, and we'll pass out honestly balanced budgets for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Pence. Now we move on to the second part of our Lincoln Douglas format, with Mr. Gregg offering a 1-minute statement of his choosing.
Thank you. You know, it's great to be here in Fort Wayne tonight, the home of the Silverado pickup. You know, my career politician opponent drives all around Indiana now in a red Silverado. He does it because he wants you to forget about how he voted on the auto loans. He voted against them and against the 120,000 Hoosiers who work in the car industry. That's just not Chrysler at Kokomo and General Motors here at Fort Wayne. That's the seat plant in Whitley County, Federal Mogul in Frankfort, foundry down at Bedford. 330 drivers across Indiana down to your local dealers. The congressman uses that red pickup as a prop. Congressman, that ain't a prop. That's 120,000 Hoosier jobs that the Prince Murdoch ticket didn't lift one finger to help. And as governor, if Cummins or Eli Lilly needs help, I'll do everything possible. And that's why I have proposed a paid-for targeted tax cut, have a roads, bridges plan to create 97,000 jobs, and we'll do so the Hoosier way with common sense, not the Tea Party way.
Mr. Gregg, thank you. Mr. Boneham, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you. Well, I cannot believe I have not had more inquiries about my proposal, about my statement in the last debate, where I said, if we really want to make our state solid, we will restructure the way we collect our income taxes from our citizens. We need to collect our taxes at a county level, letting our counties collect that taxes, keep those dollars, and push the rest of the money up. If we create a scenario where our counties are strong, if we create a scenario where local government has the ability to guide local problems, to solve local issues on creating more jobs, on creating that ability to let jobs come in, I have said that we should take all our taxes in Indiana to a 3% rate, even less than that 10%. Take it all the way to 3%. 3% personal income tax, 3% corporate business income, business tax. If we did that, every small business across the state of Indiana would instantly be putting 5% back in their pocket, 5% of their sales. We would instantly see a rise in businesses starting. We would see more spending happening. The one thing about that, we have to make sure every business across the state of Indiana is paying that same fair and level playing field, that same rate. No more tax abatements, no more deferred taxes. No more giving one company an advantage while resting it on the back of others. I don't want to pick your pocket. No, I'm not going to. I'm running out of time. Thank you very much.
I'm going to cut you off, but no, thank you, Mr. Boneham. And Mr. Pence, the floor is yours now for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Ken. Well, John, thanks first for admiring my truck. I know all the folks at the GM plant here would like me to remind you they sell a whole lot of them, and you're welcome to buy one too. It's a great vehicle, and we've enjoyed campaigning in that truck for the last 6-7 months around the Hoosier State. It's been just wonderful. Let me speak to this issue. You know, first off, John, you've thrown a lot of definitions my way. One of them's career politician. I think people do deserve to know you spent 16 years at the State House. That's 4 more years than I've spent in public service. And I honor your service. I honor any men and women that are willing to serve. But let's set the record straight here just a little bit about this career politician business. And the other thing is let me make it clear. You know, when a president of my own party came to me and said he wanted to take $700 billion from Main Street here in Indiana and transfer it to Wall Street, I led the fight against the Wall Street bailout. I just thought it was the wrong thing to do. And I still believe that. I thought we could have done something with those large banks in New York City in the form of a backstop, not a handout. But I lost that fight, but I fought it hard, even against leaders in my own party, John. And people know that I'll take a strong stand for taxpayers every time. Now, when the auto bailout came around, it seemed to be more of the same. Now, you like to frame this thing that it was a choice between doing the auto bailout or doing nothing. John, you know, that's just not true. I mean, we had an opportunity to provide a backstop and federal loan guarantees that would have brought private investment through a structured bankruptcy that I still believe to this day would have left those auto companies better off than they are today. I mean, so let's stop this business of it being either or. We all support the auto industry here in Indiana and in this country. I just wanted to do it without putting taxpayers on the hook for one more bailout, the way you'd like to do it.
And Mr. Gregg, your minute.
Well, Congressman, it wasn't a bailout, and everybody at that GM plant needs to know that if you would have had your way, that would be empty right now. No, Congressman, this is my minute right now, if you don't mind. We follow the rules in Indiana. Yeah. If we would have been following your plan, that would be the world's largest indoor flea market. That is absolutely what it would have been. You said that the bailout wasn't appropriate, and you also said bankruptcy wasn't appropriate at the time. The truth of the matter is you're wanting not to talk about your position. It was a loan to the automobile industry. It was an investment in Indiana workers. 120,000 people. It's 120,000 families have the opportunity to work there. And for you to stand up and say that you support it and all of this, that's that Washington, D.C. double speak. It's just, you know, you can say that stuff in Washington, but, you know, here in Indiana, that just doesn't fly. I mean, you know, you're here criticizing me when I'd like to know what bill you've passed. You're 0 and 63. Gee.
This point has raised some contention, so I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds, starting with Mr. Boneham. Thank you.
Do we want to continue down the same path and continue to elect the same type of person? I'm standing up here, and that is why I am running, to give a new voice, to give a new choice to a race for governor. It is enough with status quo. It is enough with the bickering and the blaming. Let's move forward and create some solutions.
Mr. Pence, 30 seconds.
Well, I just, you know, John, people can go check my record. We supported a structured bankruptcy for the automotive companies. We had legislation that we backed. It would have created what's called debtor-in-possession financing that was not available without a federal guarantee. We had legislation, we were ready to move on that, but folks wanted to put taxpayers on the hook, and I get that. I just will never believe that we can borrow and spend and bail our way back to a growing economy. What we got to do is get back to fiscal responsibility and personal responsibility. But John, we could have saved those companies without putting taxpayers on the hook. We could have given them a backstop, not a handout, and I was ready to fight for that.
And Mr. Gregg, your 30 seconds. We wrap up this Lincoln-Douglas extended debate.
You know, Congressman, you are real big about talking on everything, but you're always against everything. Mike, we've known each other for ages. I don't know if you got up there and drank the tea or it's the Potomac fever. You've not passed a bill in 12 years. You've introduced 63 and not passed one. Now you're going to start saying you were associated with some and all of this. You missed 86% of your committee votes. You know, you are a free trade traitor. You have decimated the steel industry in Indiana, and now you're trying to hide from the idea that now you're wanting to say, I supported the Indiana automobile industry. That's just wrong.
Now to a new 1-minute statement from Mr. Boneham.
I want to go back to last week and to one of the questions, one of the young ladies that answered a question, Amy Leonard, who was that single mom, who is that single mom, going to school, not getting much support, trying to get herself off the entitlement programs. In that transition period of starting to make money, starting for herself to earn money on her own, she has to report that money to the state. When she reports that, she's made over this magic line. Instead of backing slowly off on the help, the state instantly cuts all services. We had Amy standing up there asking all three of us what we would do as governor. Do you want to answer her now and give her that respect?
Mr. Pence, 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Rupert, and thank you for your compassion for Amy and for families all over central Indiana. You know, I really do have a lot of respect for you. You're someone that achieved a national level of celebrity, won a big prize, and came home and formed a charity to help people, and I admire that, and I say that from my heart. And I really do believe that Amy represented families that we can do a better job for. And the way we can do a better job is first by recognizing the unique challenges that our families are facing. I mean, Amy, if memory serves, was a single mom, raising kids on her own. That's something that we know about at our household. My wife Karen was raised by a single mom for a lot of her youth, and my sister, who's watching tonight, is a single mom. I don't think we've got more courageous people in Indiana than our single parents. You know, we all recognize, and our families have all been touched by the heartbreak of divorce. And I have to tell you, for those single moms that are out there raising kids, those single parents, we've got to look for ways within the welfare system to create more effective transitions, to create ways that we can allow them to meet the needs at home, but also return to the workforce or return to school. And I'm interested in exploring those with legislators in a bipartisan way. But I also say again, I do believe that here in the Hoosier State, the best thing we can do for families that are facing challenges during these difficult times is make job creation job one for the next administration. That's why I've proposed a plan that's been endorsed by job creators all over Indiana. It's a plan that would cut taxes across the board for every Hoosier by 10%. That would put a couple $100 in the pockets of every Hoosier, $500 million back into our economy over a 2-year period of time, and it'd make Indiana the lowest tax state in the Midwest. That's a way we can attract investment, attract jobs, come alongside those families, even, Rupert, as we look for ways to improve the ability of services to meet the ever-changing and challenging needs of our families.
Thank you, Mr. Pence. Mr. Gregg, your 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Rupert. I appreciate that. As I mentioned last week, I too am a single parent. And I mentioned last week that you know, the congressman has gotten real close to talking about how he wants to define and look at certain families. And I mentioned how I took exception with him basically saying that John Gregg and his 2 sons weren't a family by his definition. You know, he may be saying that about yours, but for this lady, we can improve our collection of child support. We can make college more affordable by improving Pell Grants. We can do all of these things, but we've got to have people in Congress who support them, unlike my opponent. My opponent came out with a plan the other day where one of the things he was going to do was promote marriage. I've traveled Indiana for 23 months. Mike, I've talked to a lot of single parents, and I've never had one come up and say, find me a spouse. I've never had one come up and say, have you got a Match.com application? I'm running for governor, not the state's matchmaker. And, you know, this stuff about defining families is wrong. The best way we help this young lady out is to see to it that we take advantage of the opportunities in ag, logistics, advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and energy. But if we're going to focus on this Tea Party extreme agenda like my opponent does, where we're spending all this time arguing about the Girl Scouts and what kind of license plates you can have on a car and going back and forth on your positions on abortion for political expediency will never, ever be able to take advantage of these opportunities. We've got such opportunities in Indiana. And if we have someone that can bring us together, we can do that. I'm the only candidate who's made a payroll, been president of a university, and balanced the state's budget. So look beyond the party labels.
Mr. Boneham, you have 1 minute to conclude.
Amy, hopefully if I am governor, when I am governor, I have 20 years of experience helping people in that transition period. I have 20 years of experience slowly transitioning people as they are empowering themselves, as they are building their lives, but not yet to that point where they can pay all of their bills. That's what the entitlement programs were for, is that safety net, that transition time. Now, we don't want to create a scenario where you have to decide, do I continue on or do I stop and hold my hand back out? Amy, I know you're going to continue on. And I know as governor, I will create, the same way that I have done for 20 years, those transitional programs for our entitlements to turn them into the empowerment programs.
Thank you, Mr. Boneham. That wraps up the Lincoln Douglas segment. Now back to voter questions. We're joined now by Ryan Ripley, a project manager from Fort Wayne. He's with us here tonight with his question. Welcome, Mr. Ripley.
Great. Thank you. Good evening. In 2007, the Kernan-Shepard report recommended 27 ways to streamline local government, such as establishing a county executive with managerial authority over many county offices and combining a number of Indiana's smaller school districts to provide better education for Hoosier students. But only about 1/3 of the suggestions have been implemented. What other Kernan-Shepard report recommendations would you strongly support as the state's next governor?
Mr. Pence, you're first.
Well, thanks, Ryan. And obviously a hotly debated issue in the last session of the General Assembly, and we did pass some reforms that I think serve taxpayers and strengthen the integrity of our local government. But, you know, as I go forward into this process, people ask me sometimes, are you committed to local government reform? And I always tell them, if you check my record, you'll find out I'm committed to government reform. I'm committed to government reform at every level, including local government. But I recognize that the debate that took place over those proposals in the last General Assembly suggests that we ought to think about a new approach. And so as I've been talking to local officials, I've said, look, is there a way that in a bipartisan manner we could come together and develop a framework where local governments, county and city governments, might be able to consolidate back office functions without losing front office accessibility? You know, I'm a rural guy. I got a cornfield in my backyard, grew up with a cornfield in my backyard. I understand the importance of local government to Hoosiers. But I think we can find greater efficiencies by promoting reform and still preserving everything people love about local government in Indiana.
Mr. Gregg, 1 minute.
Thank you. I wanted to compliment you on that haircut. I like that. We got something in common. I'm a small town attorney, and I've represented and still do represent a couple township trustees. I've appeared in front of all kinds of county officials in their various capacities. The problem with the Kernan-Shepard report, in my opinion, it was another one of these top-down deals. Best ideas don't come out of Washington, D.C. They don't come out of Indianapolis. If I want to make the Allen County Courthouse better, I'm going to go into the Allen County Courthouse and talk to a recorder and an auditor and an assessor, and I'm going to have some trustees sitting at the table. This was one of these top-down things. I don't think there's hardly any support out there right now for that reform to go on. I do agree that we need to always look at government, see how we can make it more efficient. I realize we're operating under a constitution written in 1851, but I think we can do a better job by being a little more inclusive, letting more people have a say in how we reform government. We can do it if we work together.
Mr. Boneham, your 1 minute.
Centralization of government sounds on paper like it would work, and it should work on paper. In the real world, when you take the government out of your local community and you put that ruling faction hundreds of miles away, you've eliminated local government. You send down now to counties administrative wants, legislation, but no idea on how they're supposed to pay for it. Decentralization of government actually will save money. Closing down those offices, decentralizing our government and putting the power back into the community, into the counties, letting the counties have that ability to control what is going on, how they are providing their services, how they are paying for their services. Give the power back to the counties. If the county is solid, the state will be solid.
Mr. Boneham, thank you. Big Ben is moving quickly, so this next question, I'll ask for 30-second responses from each of you. The question comes from Mary Hoffer, a registered nurse from Warsaw, who's here with us tonight. Mary?
Hi, thank you for letting me be here. 18 states and the District of Columbia have all enacted some type of medical marijuana law. Should medical marijuana come before you as our next governor, would you support or oppose it, and why?
Mr. Gregg, you're first.
You know, Mary, I would oppose the decriminalization of marijuana. I don't think that's the solution. I know the legislator who introduced or has proposed that, and I understand his reasons. I have a lot of respect for him, and he's got very substantial reasons for doing it. But I don't want to decriminalize marijuana. As far as the medical use, that's something that I at least would want to talk about. I'm a cancer survivor. I didn't use anything like that, but I know that some people have had all kinds of pains, and I think at least I'd want to listen to them. I'm not inclined to do it, but I'd want to show them respect and listen to it.
Thank you for your brevity. 30 seconds for you, Mr. Boneham, please.
Medical marijuana has its place. It is a plant, and as we know, prohibition has never worked. It is not a processed chemical compound. It is a plant. And if it will help some of our suffering patients in Indiana, we should let them have that plant. We don't want to be toting just to the chemical companies because they cannot produce that plant. Let our people that want medical marijuana be able to have that.
Mr. Pence, your 30 seconds.
Well, Mary, thank you for the question. And I would not support the decriminalization of marijuana. To be candid with you, growing up in the Hoosier State, I've seen too many people become involved with marijuana and have their lives sidetracked as a result, or to see marijuana become a gateway drug to even worse addictions on their part. I'm proud to be endorsed by the State Police Alliance, the Indianapolis Fraternal Order of Police. We need to get more serious about confronting the scourge of drugs, especially meth in Indiana. And decriminalization is not the right path, in my honest opinion.
Okay, gentlemen, question for me, 30-second responses again, please. We received several questions about the coal-to-gas power plant to be built in Rockport in southern Indiana as a result of past legislative efforts and additional legislation that may still be necessary to advance the project. Concerns expressed in those submitted questions include threats to public health and the environment and evidence that the venture may be profitable for out-of-state investors but will artificially raise the bills of consumers. If you're elected governor, please tell us whether you would support or oppose the project and why. We begin with Mr. Gregg.
No me.
Mr. Pence, I'm sorry.
No me.
Mr. Boneham, we moved. I'm sorry.
I don't think
That's
we
okay.
looked. One thing
And who were you calling governor? Were you calling me governor?
Say, we don't.
No, anyway.
I'll call you governor.
Being able to continue to provide affordable energy for Indiana is very important, but giving outside companies, foreign companies, or even just outside our state, that ability to come in, pollute our land, create a scenario where they're taking money out of our state. We need to make sure that our energy stays in Indiana, the dollars stay in Indiana, and the people responsible for creating a problem are those that clean that problem up.
Mr. Pence, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Ken. And let me say, I think Indiana's low-cost energy, I think we're the 13th lowest cost energy state in the country, is one of our great assets in attracting investment and creating jobs. I want to see an all-of-the-above energy strategy continue to mount in Indiana in developing our coal resources. With regard to the plant in question, the state has a contract in place. I would not use any authority as governor to overturn that. But if voices in the legislature wanted to revisit that and discuss that, I would have a willing ear to both those that support it and those that oppose it. But we'll put ratepayers and taxpayers first.
Mr. Gregg, your 30 seconds.
Thank you for the question. I come from the energy background. I have said many times that Indiana's got one of the strongest opportunities in energy. We've got coal, and I disagree vehemently with President Obama, who has not been a friend of the coal industry, and that's actually my background. I think clean coal technology, clean coal is part of it. I agree with the congressman, we are a low-cost state. We've got opportunities in methane, we've got opportunities in natural gas, wind, and biomass. The contract that has been entered into, I've heard all about, I've read all about, I've got a group of people studying it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, gentlemen, it is time for our final question of the evening. Each candidate will have 90 seconds here to respond. After 3 debates, this is the last time you'll be able to speak to a statewide broadcast audience. With the election now 2 weeks away, what do you want voters to remember about you as a candidate and as a person? Mr. Pence?
Well, thank you, Ken, and let me thank the Commission again for a wonderful series of debates that have served the public interest, and you personally for a great job tonight. What a great question. A year and a half of traveling to every corner of Indiana, meeting Hoosiers, listening to Hoosiers. I think as people go to polls 12 days from now, I'd like them to know 2 things about Mike Pence. Number 1 is I'm a lifelong Hoosier. I was born and raised in this state, in the small town of Columbus, Indiana. Went down to Hanover College, studied American history, moved up to the capital city, met the girl of my dreams who was a little school teacher, and we built everything that really matters. We built a family, we built a business, and we built a life together. And I got to fulfill a boyhood dream in my 40th year when I was elected to represent my hometown in our nation's capital. I've sought to do that with independence and integrity and consistency. And it's been an honor for me to represent our state. But the other thing I'd want you to know about me is that I'm running for governor because I have a plan. I think this is no ordinary time in the life of our state. I think if we elect the right leaders at every level with renewed energy and good ideas, I think Indiana can take our rightful place as the leading state in the Midwest and one of the fastest growing state economies in the United States of America. I ask for your support on Election Day to help us make Indiana the state that works.
Thank you, Mr. Pence. Mr. Gregg, 90 seconds.
Thank you very much. I too ask for your support, and I'd like to ask you to once again look beyond those party labels. I'm the only candidate who has experience in these 3 very important areas: state government, the private sector, and in education. I bought my first business at 15, and I know how to create a payroll. I've worked for 2 Fortune 500 companies and been involved with my dad and his family business for over 50 years. I was president of Vincennes University, and I know firsthand the importance of college, and I'm proud to say I'm a first-generation college graduate. I also was a member of the Indiana House of Representatives when we were equally tied, and we passed bipartisan budgets, and every single bill that landed on the governor's desk had Democrat and Republican support. That's not something my congressional opponent here can say. For us to move Indiana forward, you've got to look at who's delivered results. Not at the rhetoric, not at the slogans, much more than that. There's no place in Indiana for Tea Party and that extremism. That's what my opponent, Congressman Pence, has been all about. I too grew up on a farm and grew up in a small town, 350 people live on a farm. But folks, the truth of the matter is, he's an extremist, and that's his business. He can have any view he wants. But you know, this is Indiana, and it's time for some moderation. It's time that everybody has a seat at the table, and I'll protect you from the Tea Party, and we'll do so in a bipartisan fashion.
Mr. Gregg, thank you. Mr. Boneham, your 90 seconds.
Thank you. You know, 12 days left to go in the campaign. Campaigning for the last year and a half, gosh. Traveling across the state, what do I want people to remember about me? Is that I stood up and I made my voice heard. When no one thought that that reality star from that silly TV show was going to be running for governor, I said I am. I said, it's our time. It's our time to stand up, to be counted, to show that the person out there that has been giving back for years, the person out there that has created multiple charities, multiple opportunities, multiple businesses, deserves to be on that stage. I started years ago working with families, and those families turned into communities. Those communities turned into the entire city of Indianapolis. I want to spread our ideas, our empowerment, our small business initiative, our tax reform, our criminal justice reform, our empowerment across the state of Indiana. If we do that in the first step, we won't be saving hundreds of thousands. We'll be saving hundreds of millions. Remember, a vote for me is not a wasted vote. A vote for me is a vote for all of us.
Mr. Boneham, thank you. And from the voters of Indiana, thank you, gentlemen, to all three of you for being here tonight. That concludes the third and final Indiana gubernatorial debate. On behalf of the Indiana Debate Commission, I thank the candidates for taking the time to be here tonight, as well as for the two previous events. And I remind the audience that the election is Tuesday, November the 6th. The polls will be opening 11 days, 7 hours, and just a few minutes from now, so please do get out and vote. Thanks again to our broadcast production partners, Lakeshore Public Television and WFWA PBS 39, also the host for tonight's event, as well as the volunteers of the Indiana Debate Commission and its affiliate organizations. I'm Ken Owen again. Thank you for being with us. Good night from Fort Wayne.